What's up, everybody, and welcome to PPR Podcast number 59. It is the Week 7 recap and Week 8 preview show. As always, I'm Chase Izidoro, and I'm joined by our North County Game of the Week reporter, Nick James. And then we're also joined by today the field producer for the Game of the Week. That's Devin Reiners, and we brought him here, obviously, because such a big matchup this last week, Lincoln against Cathedral. Devin, what was kind of your, well, first off, you get to see all the best matchups every single week. That's first and foremost. So what was kind of your big takeaway from really the two biggest teams in San Diego?
Yeah, I thought it was a good game. I mean, it had a lot of hype going into it, and it really, it lived up to the hype. It was, 14-14 at halftime. And I know the final score was 31-17. You might think, 14-point win, but it really came down to the wire. So it was a lot of fun, and it really lived up to the hype. I think Lincoln got up to a 14-0 lead, but then Cathedral's defense fought right back with their own pick six. Roderick Robinson still 8 on the day, 217 yards, 3 touchdowns. But like you said, 14-point game at the final score, but really it comes down to Josiah Cox's game-winning pick six, where he actually picked it off, I think, about the 10-yard line. Cathedral was about to go in for a score. That's how it played out. But how far apart were the two teams in your own opinion? I don't think they were far apart really, at all. I think they played a really close game, and I think if they played each other 10 times, it might be 5-5. I think they're both really good teams, and it showed on Friday night. And it came down to a really good defensive play by Josiah Cox at the end of the game to seal that for Lincoln.
Has Lincoln come away as the best team that you've seen so far?
Yeah, I think they have. We've seen a lot of good teams. Like you said, we see the best game every week. But yeah, I think Lincoln, to me, looks like the best team that we've seen so far.
Now, Devin, I wanted to ask you something. When these other teams, when Lincoln gets into the playoffs and they figure it out, obviously Roderick is just one of the most dynamic running backs we've ever seen in the county. And I've seen Reggie when he was in high school and things of that nature, and just everyone that runs with that Ricky Williams and those guys back in the day. But when you see a team that takes away, when they're put 9 guys in the box and they take away Roderick, do you think Lincoln, I know they got some dogs on the outside, a receiver and QB and things of that nature, but do you think if someone takes away Roderick that they can still make enough plays in the passing game, that when these teams take away Roderick, they'll be able to pass just enough to advance, or to be the team that's on that same level that has the equal amount of dogs that they have?
I think they can. We saw it early in the game against Cathedral. They had some success in the passing game in the first and second quarter. But then you did see Cathedral play a little tighter on their receivers, didn't give them space for those 10-yard curls that they were getting. So I think maybe that could be an issue if teams play tight on their receivers. But I think that they can pass enough, like you said, to stay in games in the playoffs. And
then, we talk about, can someone stop Roderick? I think this is probably his biggest test so far would be this Cathedral defense, and yet he still went off. And, it wasn't the modern day type of performance that he had, but, he still went off. I'm not saying he's Superman, but I haven't seen Superman bleed yet. So I think he's got superpowers at this point. I'm not sure that there is a team yet that is on Lincoln's level when Roderick has his day. Maybe he has that off day and then it forces them into a close game. But at this point right now, I think Lincoln's kind of separating themselves from the rest of the pack. Would you kind of agree on that, Devin? Yeah, I would. And in that game against Cathedral, you saw times where Cathedral it looked like they were going to slow down Roderick Robinson. He'd have 3 or 4 1 or 2 yard runs in a row, and you're like, okay, they've kind of figured him out, but then he'd bust a 25-yarder, and then he'd bust a 15-yarder. So I think, can anyone really slow him down? I don't know if that can happen.
You know who reminds me of, you guys, is when I was in East Texas. He reminds me of, this is probably a little bit before your time, but he reminds me of the Tyler Rose, Earl Campbell. Because he's big and he's fast. So if you watch Roderick, if you ever go back and look at some film on Earl Campbell from back in the day, Roderick is fast. He gets to the next level, and he's really, really fast, and he gets to the next level, and then he's on top of you. And if you get in his way, he's going to run you over. And he's fast. So he reminds me a little bit of Earl Campbell and a little bit of Barry Sanders. Devin, who does he kind of remind you of when you look at Roderick play? It could be an older running back or someone that's playing today. Who do you think he kind of looks like?
I'm going to say, I mean, he's kind of a mix in my eyes of like a Derrick Henry type and then maybe a faster running back like Reggie Bush. I think he has both qualities. I think he can run between the tackles and run somebody over. But then when he gets to the outside or gets in space, he has the agility to make guys miss in open field. So I think he's kind of a mixture. I think he's like that all-around back that you would want.
There you go. You said Derrick Henry and Reggie. I said Barry and Earl Campbell. So there you go.
There you go. Perfect blend of everything.
Yeah, exactly. Old school, new school. There you go.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Devin, for your Game of the Week coverage for Lincoln and Cathedral, and we look for another great game this upcoming week.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Dev. See you later, bud.
Thanks, bro. So now we move on to our North County Game of the Week. El Camino 23 against La Costa Canyon 20. We've seen this El Camino team plenty of times, Nick, where they're in every game, and mostly because their defense puts them in positions to be in every game. What was kind of your big takeaway to where they upset a very good LCC team?
Well, right off the bat, when I talked to Coach Sovakul during our pre-PPR, he had talked to me, El Camino has the best offensive line on both sides of the ball in the county. Like, they're just their size.
Yeah.
They pass the eye test. So when you hear that from another coach giving another team props 3 hours before kickoff, you don't see that often. I'm like, oh, they're going to downplay. Oh, they're good. We're going to take it one game at a time, et cetera, et cetera. But Coach Sovakul, he kept it 100. These kids across the board are really stout. And they were up, I believe LCC was up 20-9, if I remember correctly, in the third quarter. And then Coach Hobbs kind of flipped a switch to they got going. And then they flipped it, and then they went to the ground game because they were trying to do some dink and dunks. They went to the ground game, and Zerial Eatman, he started eating, no pun intended, but Eatman started eating. He started getting going. He was getting some chunk plays, and he wasn't getting those earlier in the game. Then they scored, got the 2-point conversion. Then they were right back in it. It was 20-17. And so they their line kind of took over, and I think that's what Coach Sovakul was worried about, is Coach Hobbs wearing him down on the offensive side of the ball and their D-line, because El Camino, the Wildcats, they got some straight dogs. I mean, they got some boys up front, and they're people movers, and that's what Coach Sovakul was worried about, and then that came into play.
I think I might be wrong on this, but I think when they win their games, they've been ahead. So for me, it was surprising that because we know they have the good defense, we know they have the good guys on the inside, but to see them come back and win the game, especially just on the ground too, that's a very impressive win.
Yeah, because they're not built. I don't think Coach Hobbs doesn't want to play chasing, because they don't sling it around a lot like Carlsbad does. So if they get down, and you're like, ooh, we like to run the ball, but when you're chasing, you kind of that's hard to run the ball and then playing catch up. They just kind of stuck to their game plan. And they ran the ball like you said, and then they popped a big one. Then they just kind of took over from there. But yeah, it was just the way they're built. You would think that them chasing, they wouldn't come back, but in the fourth quarter, they just it was right there, and then they ended up just kind of D'ing up one last time at the end and holding them off.
Yeah,
it was a really good game.
It was Tate Reed with the game-sealing interception.
And then Connor and a Cherico. Connor came back. He had missed the last 3 games for LCC with a knee injury, so he came out there with a brace, but he looked good. He was hitting these little pop passes, little play-action passes, and they do just enough with Mays, the running back. He ran just enough to open up with the passing game, and then they would hit, and then Connor would go deep. And he's got Ladd, and he's got Fromm. And those 2 young men are really tall. They're about 6'2", 6'3", and they can go up and get it and make some plays. They're athletic. So for them to jump out early, I wasn't surprised. But then when El Camino did come back and run them into the ground, that was pretty shocking.
That's why I was kind of surprised that, because Connor did come back this week. I was almost anticipating LCC was going to go back to being the team that we saw them beat when they beat Del Norte.
Yeah, because they had Splavik when he was there.
From El Camino's perspective, you've watched a lot of teams in the North. Where do they rank as far as the teams in the North? Because, they've already lost their game to Carlsbad, so it's going to be hard for them to win the Avocado League now unless LCC goes and upsets Carlsbad. Where do you see this El Camino team going? They're probably not going to be in the open division. They'll probably be in D1.
They're probably in B1.
Can they go and win that CIF title this year? Do you think they have the guys for it?
They do, because they have the eye test. Their line they're just so good in the trenches, and they're good at quarterback. They're good at wideout. Tate Reed is a 2-way player. That young man can go on both sides of the ball. And Mr. Eatman, he runs the rock, and they're good. And then Coach Hobbs plays defense. sound defense. They don't make a lot of mistakes, and they play well enough to where they're not going to beat themselves. They run the ball, so they're going to kill clock. And I can see them making a real serious run. And what we saw, Carlsbad is, everyone's, darling at the dance with, Julian Sand and Zach Marshall, and they got some dogs, and they run around and they spread you out and they do everything, and they played them to the wire.
I know.
And they played them to the wire.
Now, it was a game without Zach.
Right.
And I think Zach does have that type of impact where he is a game changer.
But still, nonetheless,
they went out
there. Yeah, they were right there.
We were
exactly.
getting told that El Camino could have easily won that game, and we've been saying that for a while now.
Yeah.
So big props.
And Carlsbad is a winner. I mean, a couple, games where, the modern day game, or they could be, because they're sitting at 4-1 right now, right?
Yeah.
They could be 3. No, they're 4-1. They had a bye.
5-1.
Right, they're 5-1 bye. That's right. They had their bye the first week of the season, so they're 5-1. But they could be 3-2.
Yeah.
They could be, because modern day had them on the ropes.
Yeah, but I think the difference is that Carlsbad has been surviving those.
Yeah.
That's all that matters at the end of the day is getting the W.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm just saying there's a play here or a play there where Carlsbad, we wouldn't be talking about like they're at the top just yet. With the cream of the crop. They're cream of the crop, but I'm saying it'd be a little bit of a tighter race as far, the way it's sitting out right now, though.
So I also have some apologies to make towards the Mar Vista team.
Oh, the Mariners?
Yeah.
Can't hate on the South Bay.
They're dragged.
Let's go.
I wasn't hating on the South Bay. I was giving the love to Bonita.
I'm giving you the business.
Mar Vista, rightfully so, was dragging me on Twitter because I said I'd be shocked if they beat Bonita in this game, and they went out there and put up 49 points and beat them 49-14. The biggest player was Alec Wushik. 346 total yards, 5 total touchdowns, an incredible performance, and I think it sums it up best in his post-game interview. He talked about his O-line.
It was a huge win on both sides of the ball. Like we were talking about it at halftime. Who did better? Who's doing better? Offense, defense? No, it's a team. It was a team effort. My line, amazing job. This is the best game they've had so far. They held it down for me. They opened up holes for me. They set a pocket for me. Without them, there's no win.
How that was the best game they played all year, because we've seen games where the O-line wasn't there and their offense just couldn't get going.
Right.
And those guys stepped up, and then look what he did.
And Alec, if you keep him upright, that young man can sling it. I watched him play last year.
I think he broke one off for a rushing touchdown as well. He's very athletic.
He's very athletic, and he can sling it. If you keep him upright, he can sling it around the lot. And so Coach Arciaga down in Bonita, I didn't see that one coming.
No.
Like you said, you were getting dragged on Twitter.
They came off a good win.
They came off a big win.
Mar Vista, man.
And I thought maybe a really good game, but not the way it went out where they blew them out like that. I definitely didn't see that one coming.
The really big thing was from Bo Furteg. He said that was the best game I've seen Mar Vista play in a long time, and they look like it almost looks like an entirely new team the way they played. So, I think they're emerging as D5 contenders now. We'll see. They still got to keep this up. They got to put on back-to-back performances and keep going. But if they could play like they did this last Friday night, Mar Vista could be a very good team.
The Mariners, they're out there. They did work the other night. Yeah. So they could be right there in the mix for sure.
And then a couple quick ones here. We've been waiting forever for the City League to get going because so many of these teams, UC, Mission Bay, Point Loma, Morse, they've all been playing very well and very good offenses.
That UC team, you're talking about good offenses. UC scores, like 40-something a game? Just off the top of the head, not actually looking at the stats, but every time I look up, 40-something to 40-something, or they give up a lot, but they score a ton, it seems like.
And I went to go watch Bishops on Saturday play, and for them to beat that Bishops team is a very good team. And it came close. It came down to the wire. But this UC team, I don't know if they're getting talked about enough. They are a very good offense in this county, and they have so many weapons.
They got some dogs
too.
So
Harris, LaDainian Lawrence, and then obviously Sam Cooper,
Jackson.
I know.
They got dogs.
Yeah,
they got some straight dogs.
They're incredible. Yeah. Dre Gardner had a kickoff return for a touchdown, a pick six, and a receiving touchdown. So an all-around performance, and it seems like they're getting that from a lot of their guys on their team. And it's something we need to see more from the City League is these matchups coming up. Because really it's starting to look, I'm not going to put Morse out of it just yet because we know how good they are, but it's really starting to look like Point Loma versus UC is going to be the matchup to see who takes down that title.
When is that one actually, in a couple weeks?
I think it's a couple more weeks.
Yeah.
I don't believe it's this week.
Yeah, that game's going to be off the chain.
And then we need to shout out, obviously, Mount Miguel.
The Matadors.
51-6 against Monte Vista. Matthew Barton, 6 touchdown passes for Mount Miguel. Really just an incredible performance. what do you got to say about the teams from Spring Valley, man?
Matadors doing their thing. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's a rivalry game for you to win 51-6 against your rivalry, because I think Mount Miguel and Monte Vista are separated probably by 5 miles, I believe, right there in Spring Valley and Spring Street and right there off the 94 and all that. They're separated, like they're really, really close. So that's a big win for them. And like you said, the Mats they're flying under the radar. Mats are flying under the radar, kind of just doing their thing and getting after it. Yeah, 6 tubs. That's like what, 75 fantasy points?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, he was very impressive. I believe we had him as our top performer, or one of them. I don't think he won this week, but just an impressive performance all around from the Matadors.
Yeah.
And I guess we could get into our top 10s right now. For myself, I have Lincoln still at number 1 after beating Cathedral. Cathedral drops down to number 3, and I have Carlsbad taking the 2nd spot after another impressive win for Carlsbad. I still have Madison at 4, Helix 5, Poway 6. They didn't move. Point Loma goes up 1 for me, up to 7. Mater Dei goes from number 10 to number 8. I have El Camino, who was not ranked, going to number 9, and then Granite Hills at number 10. I think I had
Granite's
LCC.
been on a good one. Granite's been on a good one. I remember, I didn't mean to cut you off, but on the North County game of the week, I believe my first game of the season, Poway hosted Granite.
And that was
Granite
a surprising one, because it came down to the wire.
Yeah, that one came down to the wire. I mean, I think it was 27-15, or it was a 12-point game, but it was a lot closer than the final score indicated. I think it was a 10-point game or a 12-point game when it was all said and done. But Granite was right in that game, and for them to come up from El Cajon to come up to Poway and play on the road in a hostile environment right out the box. And Granite played them tough, and Granite's got some dogs on the outside, and they can sling it, and they got some weapons. Joaquin Thomas, that young man can go. I like you putting them at 10 because, like I said, they started out 0-1. Now they're 4-2.
Yeah.
So they've ran off a few in a row.
And the other loss was against Madison.
Right.
And
Madhouse is off the chain right now.
And they were up on Madison.
Yeah.
Madison had to come back in that game.
Yeah, because that one was a 15-12 final, wasn't it?
Brandon Stone came back saying how impressed he was from Granite Hills. So I have to put him in there. And that's really why I dropped Mira Mesa out of my top 10 at the moment, is because of the performance against Madison. Because we just saw Mira Mesa lose to Madison. And they kind of lost their 2 biggest tests of the season against them and Helix. So really, I think Granite Hills deserves the right to be in the top 10 based on that reason.
I'm going to fight you on this one, though. I know.
Sun Devils.
I'm a North County guy.
They're right there.
My man Bradley Cooper. Mount Carmel, I think, needs to be in that mix. I mean, especially how they beat Rancho Buena Vista. Rancho Buena Vista was undefeated.
That was very impressive.
Mount Carmel's on a good one. Josh Bell's doing his thing.
He's slowly becoming one of the best quarterbacks in this county, honestly.
Hey, every single week,
if you watch his play, he just makes incredible
throws.
And
when you
all the
look,
time.
I watch Mount Carmel, and you're like, oh, okay, they're going to go out there and do their thing. But then they're faster than they look, and you're like, ooh, that dude's getting behind him. Like, ooh, Connor Bernal, touchdown. You're like, ooh, Josh is slinging it to Drew Ventimiglia. Ooh, like they got weapons, and you're kind of sleeping on them. You're like, oh, they don't pass the eye test. These kids don't look like they don't pass the eye test. They don't look like they're fast, or they don't, just whatever that case may be.
And I think so many people only look at the highlights on PPR.
Yeah, exactly.
So we only see the offensive stuff. I don't think I've seen many pick sixes from them, but their defense is really good.
That's why I think Mount Carmel needs to be. I would say they need to be that. I honestly.
I
know Mater Dei's got dogs, and Mater Dei's played a really good schedule, but I just can't see Mater Dei being in there at 2-4.
That's fine.
And
I had them outside for a while.
Right, but I just think, I know they scheduled up this year, but I think Mount Carmel needs to be
in that mix.
In that mix.
I'm kind of right there with you.
So I mean, and I'm a North County guy, and then South Bay in my heart. North County's where I work, but Drew Wrestling, Bradley Cooper, I think he needs to be in there.
They're gonna have a tough test down the stretch as well. They got Poway coming up, which I'm pretty sure we're all looking forward to that game.
Yeah, that game's gonna be off the chain too.
That's gonna be a great one.
That game's gonna be off the chain.
Almost certainly you'll be there.
Absolutely.
And then so now we preview the next week's games, and we start with game of the week. Another big test for Cathedral Catholic as they host 6-0 Madison, another huge Western League game. We looked at Lincoln when they were playing them and said, all right, it's probably going to be close because both defenses are really good. Same thing kind of goes for Madison here. Maybe Madison doesn't have that big player on offense like Roderick Robinson, but they still got guys, Jake Jackson.
The Dons, the best way to beat Madhouse is to run the rock and keep away, because Madison is their quick strike. I would equivalent Madison to Carlsbad. 5-yard hits, gone for 95 yards, because they got dogs. They got some riders, and so I would think Coach Doyle needs to run the ball, They need to just play it like El Camino does. They need to run Will Bond. They need to run the ball and play keep away and keep Madison's offense off the field. And I think that game, if that game's like in the low 20s, like maybe in the teens, Cathedral's got a shot. I think if it gets to where Madison wants to sling it around the lot, I think Madison gets them.
I would say that too, but I think Madison's also got a chance here, even if it is low, because of that defense. The Dons could very well control time of possession, but we've seen time and time again this Madison defense will make the big play. A fourth down stop, when they go for it, they always make it. Third down stops, they seem to always get. They always get those interceptions that are crucial. I think this Madison defense is extremely underrated because they turn the tide. And we've seen it in close games all the time where it's like Madison turned the tide, they go down, they beat Granite Hills.
Yeah.
It's tough to test this one out. I'm guessing
I agree with you on that.
I'm leaning towards the Dons because the Dons could have just drove down and tied Lincoln at the end. And, pick six obviously changed that. But I've also been riding high on Madison since the 7-on-7. I came to talk to you. I was like, these guys are for real.
Yeah.
This one's going to be a good one, man. And so many implications for the Open Division as well. Because Madison, if they pull this off, they're right in there, and they deserve to be in there. And then we've moved to the game you will be covering, the North County game of the week. The 5-1 Mount Carmel Sun Devils at 3-3 Del Norte. You got to see Del Norte this year. I believe it was the RB game where they got upset. Del Norte, to that point, was off to a very hot start, though, 3-0. They now lost 3 in a row. What is kind of your big takeaway from that game? Because you got to see both those two teams play.
Del Norte's got some kids that can go. That's,
love the quarterback, Schneider.
Schneider's nice, and the young man, the sophomore,
Ty Olsen.
Ty Olsen.
Highlight reel every week.
That young man, that was a 10th grader. He's out there balling. I saw him in person when that game went to the wire against RB. They made play after play after play, and for that young man to be a sophomore, and I believe Schneider's a junior.
Yeah, I believe so.
And so Coach Cole's licking his chops that he's got some talent, still going to be, because Del Norte will be good next year as well. But Mount Carmel, the Sun Devils, that's going to be a good game. Mount Carmel's going to go on the road. I don't think that will affect them much. It's a hop, skip, and a jump from their campus.
Yeah.
But Wesleyan, he's an offensive-minded guy. So when they took away Rancho Buena Vista's running back, you're a young man.
Trapasso.
Trapasso.
Yeah.
Trapasso. They took away Trapasso. He showed me something that night because I didn't see Mount Carmel going into Rancho Buena Vista. I believe that game was at RBV, right? Yeah. I didn't see Coach Wesleyan and them beating them like that and taking
it was on
away
both sides of the
Trapasso.
ball too. Yeah, defense stepped up so much, and the offense was just able to.
But that's what I'm
out.
saying. I was shocked because Wesleyan is an offensive guy, and for them to go in there and dominate the way they did, and now they're going to Del Norte, and Del Norte is pretty balanced. I think that's going to be a pretty good game because Del Norte can run it because they got a really good running back as well, and they can pass it and they can sling it, and they're pretty balanced. So I think that's going to be a really good game. I think that one's like 24-21,
it feels like that
20.
Del Norte's got to have it, right?
Oh, they got to have it. They're 3 up and 3 down.
And then 3 down. I feel like they have to have that chip on the shoulder.
Got to have just like the Raiders yesterday. They had to have it. Couldn't go 0-4.
And then, they could play spoiler in this Palomar League for Mount Carmel because right now Mount Carmel needs to keep the pace with Poway. And really, I believe RB is 2-0 as well. Mm-hmm. But they can really play spoiler because they have lost, I believe, 2 games now. So this is a huge test for them, and huge way to kind of stick it to those rivals.
Chase, if I'm making predictions, because you know me with my guesstimations and predictions, I think that's a 3-point game.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pick the winner because I ride for both of my teams in North County. South Bay in my heart, North County is where I work. But I'm just kidding. But I think that's a 3-point game either way. I think that's a really, really good game.
Okay.
And I'll say 3 points. It's going to be a 3-point finish. I'm not going to pick the winner, but I think it's a 3-point game.
Yeah. You'll get to see on Friday night. That'll be the best part.
Absolutely.
So then we get the Jersey Mike City game of the week. Another City League game. The City Boys is going to be 5-2 Morse at 5-1 Point Loma. And we've been looking forward to these games because of how high-powered both these offenses are. Really, all the offenses, Mission Bay, UC, Point Loma, and Morse. The one thing I need to see from Morse is their defense because it hasn't been there. It hasn't been there all year, but their offense is so good that they put up 50 points every single week. You cannot do that against this Point Loma team because this Point Loma team on defense is really, really good, especially with Chase Lowry. If their defense can stop Point Loma, which I think is possible, I don't think Point Loma is some big dogs that they unstoppable offensively. But if they can stop them, they are very much in that game because of how much points Morse can put up on anybody.
And just look at that team, just the boys from the Peninsula. I mean, last year they couldn't field the team or whatever that was.
I believe it was a couple years ago now.
But just, I mean, only 2 years removed from that to where they are now. Like they're 5-2, and Coach Allen, it just. I mean, just like all of a sudden they just flipped the switch, and they're like you said, Lowry is a dog, and they got some ballers on that squad too, and Morris has got some riders
on
too.
On offense, they have so many good players that just continue to put up ridiculous stats every single week. The problem is that when they go against some bigger teams, you know, they still put up 45, but then they gave up 50.
Yeah.
And so that's what needs to change. If they can just step up this side on defense, which I think is possible, man, they have a chance to pull off the upset here.
And like you said, Point Loma's Diaz.
Yeah, they're really, really good. You have to give that other side of the ball if you're going to be Morse.
They're really fundamentally sound. And then Chase Lowry back there, just kind of roaming like Troy Polamalu. He's back there. He's all over the place
with a neck roll.
With a neck roll, right? But he's all over the place. He's down in the box. He's back out at safety. He's 10 yards off the ball. Then he's 20 yards back off the ball. He's all over the place making plays.
Yeah.
And I mean, he had a pick six last week we used for one of our plays of the week. We just jumped the route and scored. I mean, he's like a demon. He's all over the field, and you have to account for him. And the Pointers' defense is on point.
For me, I think he's slowly, or might even be on my Silver Pigskin podium at this point. He's just been incredible on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
But now we go to your South Bay, the National City Mile of Cars South Bay game of the week. 0-6 Eastlake at 5-1 Montgomery. 0-6 Eastlake just sounds wrong, right? That just sounds wrong that they're 0-6, and I feel like it's one they just have to have it. But that said, this Montgomery team,
Montgomery's D,
their defense, I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Because they went against Mission Bay, and Mission Bay has a high-powered offense. And in that game, I forget the score, but it was like one.
I think
score.
It was 9-6 or 6-3 or something like that.
And that speaks testaments to just how good this Montgomery defense is.
Coach McKay and Coach Dunkel and them, they're in the lab.
Yeah.
They're in the lab, and they scheme you up, and they look at your tendencies and they stop them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just keeping it 100. Eastlake is just down right now. I mean,
they are.
Eastlake lost a lot from last year's squad. I mean, Trey White, right?
Yeah.
Trey is at San Diego State now. He was their go-getter. They lost a lot, and for them to be 0-6 would be like you said, it just doesn't sound right, because they're one of the best teams in the South Bay year in and year out ever since they became a school back in the day. I think the school came up in 1995 after I graduated from Chula Vista High in '91, so that school wasn't even a school yet.
They did play a great game against Poway as well. They kept Poway, a high-powered Poway offense, to a low-scoring game. It's there. It hasn't all come together for Eastlake. It might come together this week. Who knows? The one thing, though, is I think we've started to see Montgomery's offense come around on the other side as well.
Yeah.
So
I think
this Montgomery team is very good.
Yeah,
so
Montgomery's
it's
very good.
tough test
Montgomery's not flashy, but they get W's.
Yes,
like they beat you 12-6, 9-7, 10-7. Like they win low-scoring games, but they play D and they win games. And at the end of the day, you're just stacking dubs. I mean, they're 5-1. So I mean, they're in the lab down there off of Picador and Palm getting it done.
And then to our El Cajon Ford East County game of the week, 3-4 El Cajon Valley at 4-2 West Hills. El Cajon Valley will be in the underdogs in this one because this West Hills team is a very good team. I believe Colin Dill is the one that leads them. But so far, El Cajon Valley is 2-1 in their league, so they are, picking up a backstretch. The teams that they played have been lesser teams. This will be their biggest test so far, but it's not out of the woods to say that they could pull an upset against West Hills. The problem is, I always feel like whenever West Hills plays at home, they always win. I don't know why. I mean, they believe they got a loss to Point Loma this year.
Is it the Smurf turf?
I think it's got to be, right? It's got to be.
It's that Smurf turf off of Mass Boulevard off the 52.
And West Hills' only losses is to a 5-1 Point Loma and a 5-1 Imperial. So they are a very good team, and like I said, especially at home. So it'll be impressive if El Cajon Valley can pull off the upset.
They're fighting Abraham Muhezis.
I'm going to say I think West Hills will probably win this one, and El Cajon Valley reserves every right to drag me like Mar Vista did this week if they pull it off.
Fighting Abraham Muhezis. They might rise up. Yeah, because that's a big game for them, because if they win that game, they get to 4-4, and then West Hills will drop to 4-3.
Yeah.
Then it's...
And El Cajon Valley would be
close the gap.
They would be 3-1 in their league.
Right.
It'd be big for them.
Right, and then you
close
close that gap right there. Yeah, absolutely.
And some final words. We have to always give congrats at the end. We got some 100th wins, guys getting to the century mark. Ron Berner, coach we all love, 100th win for over at
The
El Cap.
Fighting Ron Burners.
It feels pretty awesome. It was an ugly win, but at the end of the day, who cares about ugly wins, right? A win's a win, and we got it. Man, 100 wins, kind of crazy, right?
And then Troy Starr, his 100th win at Mount Miguel, and he gave a fantastic soundbite at the end when he was asked.
I mean, I don't find it really important. I don't measure myself against other coaches by wins.
What do you measure yourself by?
By height.
Priceless.
Perfect.
Yeah, it was
So,
unbelievable.
congrats to them on their 100th
Yes,
win.
absolutely. Congratulations,
and,
coaches.
We expect 100 more from both of them, honestly, especially with the programs that they're building for their schools.
Absolutely. And Coach McNair as well. He got his 100th as well, I believe, last week.
I believe a week or
two ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys hit the 100th mark, so it's awesome to see those guys hit their milestones.
That's good stuff right there for sure.
All right, so that's going to do it for podcast number 59. We will see you guys next week.